And welcome into another edition of the BIS Podcast, broadcasting live on the Marvin Network, where our goal is to bring you updates on technology changes and local government updates as well, to bring in a little bit of fun to make your day go by. And on today's podcast, we have an old favorite that we like to have from time to time, and that is Brandon Lewis. Brandon, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Josh. It's good to
No,
be here.
nope. It's always a great time to have you on, man. Usually when we have you on, we talk about cyber safety, and again, that's what we have on today's podcast. Or our discussion today is going to be about cyber safety. But again, first off, Brandon, always a pleasure to have you on because now you're a regular on the show.
Oh, I did not know that. That's awesome. My mom will be so proud.
I think she would be proud of her son. So,
Yes,
and
she
he's
is.
going to be talking today about cyber safety. Again, we always like to talk about. We always want to, make sure everyone's cyber safe. But on today's podcast, we're going to be discussing prevention, investigating, and recovery. And we have the guru, as you would say, of cyber safety, and that is Brandon here. So, Brandon, first off, let's talk about prevention. What you need to do to prevent cyber threats.
Yeah, prevention is the, in my opinion, the biggest part of it. Obviously, our goal is to not get have a data breach or get hacked or any kind of loss of downtime or whatever. So, and prevention is very important. And some of the things that we want to do with prevention is what I've spoken before is a layered defense, so to speak, right? So the harder it is for someone or a bad actor to penetrate your systems or get into your network is the better because they're looking at it from a cost perspective, right? Like if they have to spend hours to try and get into this network, well, then that's costing them money. Well, that's kind of what we want to do. We want to make a difficult of a target as possible, so they'll move on to somebody else, right? Because we're never going to stop, cyber threats. They're always going to be around. It's why we can't have nice things. There's always people out there that are looking to score big at the cost or expense of others, right? So the number one thing, the first thing we should always do is train all of our employees. You can have the latest technology, the most awesome software, but it boils down to end users, right? They get an email, it looks legit, they click on a link, and that begins to start the cyber threat ball rolling, as one might say. So training is super important. Um, your IT company, whoever that is, should have some sort of cybersecurity training available for you. If not, it's out there, and I feel like it should be addressed at a minimum at an annual level, and in some cases it might be twice a year, depending on the needs of your individual organization. And that's so that everybody realizes, like we've had this topic a few times, and we will continue to have it on this podcast because we feel this topic is that important. We want to continually remind it. Well, the same thing goes with training, is you want to be able to train your employees to let them know what cybersecurity is, how it looks from their perspective, what they need to do, how they should respond, or how they should act if they feel like if they've been tricked or breached or whatever, to be able to resolve those issues. In addition to training, there are a lot of other options to be able to kind of keep your network safe and your data safe. Um, you want to be able to enact policies such as multi-factor authentication. That's where a person's logging in and they have to enter a code that is sent to them separately, either through an authentication application on their phone or through an email or something like that. That way, that means that that the user or the bad actor, actually, it has to have all this other information that they may not have access to in order to simulate that person logging in, right? So if you have multi-factor authentication, that goes a long ways to help preventing this. Um, Antivirus, there should be an antivirus on every machine that is on your network, um, and having it running and up to date at all times. Also, any I see this a lot. There are a lot of software, or there's a lot of operating systems out there that are no longer supported. And we typically deal with Microsoft, and we're basically a Microsoft shop for BIS, and so a lot of what we do is based on Windows. Well, if there's Windows 7 machines out on your network, that operating system is out of date by years and it's not getting updated, it's not getting patched by Microsoft. And so there could be um, threats, or there could be exploits that can be used in order to penetrate that system, allow a bad actor to gain access that they wouldn't normally have on an operating system that is currently supported by Microsoft. So if you have old machines out there, you need to get them off your network. Need to get them upgraded to, Windows 10, or Windows 11, depending, or get the machine replaced. I know that can be a cost, but if you look at it from the cost of dealing with a cybersecurity emergency versus replacing a workstation, the dollars don't balance out, right? So, there are some organizations, and you can look up anything. You can look this up on any news related website and search, and that there are some companies that have to pay, or have paid, millions of dollars to get their data back that's been encrypted by ransomware, right? So if you kind of look at the cost analysis of it, millions of dollars in one hand versus, replacing a few workstations and keeping them up to date, there's really no equal there. I mean, it's far better to replace those machines now than to have to deal with an issue later. Um, and then make sure that you have an IT company that is managing your systems, that can patch those systems, make sure that they're getting patched and updated on a regular basis, and have monitoring capabilities to identify threats or potential issues before they become a problem. And there's other things that we can do in prevention, but the essential thing is making a layered defense. And so each of these layers: training, multi-factor authentication, antivirus, current OS, patching your machines, having an IT company that are the IT professionals managing your network, router maintenance, all of these things present a very layered defense. Makes you a harder target. Hope that makes sense.
No, Ray, it makes perfect sense because that's going to segue us into our next topic, and that's investigating. You mentioned all the steps for prevention, that two-factor authentication, training is the big thing, and that really kind of coincides, I think, with what we're going to talk about now is investigating, because the more you know, the better that you can investigate and kind of realize or even know when something pops up and you're not supposed to, click on it or whatever you're not supposed to do, and that way you're able to get to your IT provider as quick as possible, and that way they can further investigate what's going on and if an action needs to be taken.
Right. And so this is where the training kind of comes into play here. So if you have what you believe to be a real or perceived threat, your employees need to know how to respond. And it's not so much if you're going to get a data breach, or if you're going to get, an email with a bad link in it, or a document that has malicious software in it. It's more or less when that's going to happen. And so when it does happen, so when prevention does it, you're not going to be able to stop every attack, right? So when prevention is unable to do that, then you move into investigating the issue, right? And so if you have your IT professional company there, you should have a set of procedures that are specific to your organization on how you want to address those issues. Our suggestion is that you contact your IT immediately to let them know that there is either a real or perceived threat. You've clicked on a link. Pop-ups are coming up on your machine now. Maybe your machine's running slower. I mean, there can be each instance is going to be different, right? Because there's so many different types of threats out there. And so having your team trained and how to stop it obviously is great. It's not always going to work. It's not a proof against attack. And so when it happens, they need to know who do they need to contact? How do they need to respond? And that they need to understand that it is with a sense of urgency that they need to respond to this. So the quicker that your IT professionals for your organization can respond to the threat, the better off you're going to be in how much or mitigating or even stopping in some cases any damage or mitigating those issues, right? And so part of that is going to be obviously, like I just said, knowing whom to contact, making sure that that IT company or your IT professionals in-house or third party have the tools that they require to be able to find out what happened, what steps they need to take, cleaning the machine. Sometimes it's easier just to wipe the infected machine and start over. A workstation is very easy to do that. We'll talk a little bit about um, backups in the recovery phase, but this is where backups plays a huge role in mitigating damage. So if you, let's say that worst case scenario, someone clicks a link or someone gets into your network and begins to encrypt the data on your workstations and your server, right? So that data is now, there's no way that we can hack the hackers, right? These keys are in, when they encrypt the data, it's encrypted with a type of encryption that is going to be almost impossible to break or get into. So being able to hack the hackers is not going to be a viable option. So this is where backups come into play. So if you have backups of all your critical data, virtual images of your or images of your virtual servers, those kinds of things, well, then all you have to do is wipe those machines, start over, go back to backups, and now you're back up and running. And what you've lost is probably maybe a day or two, or depending on your settings for your backups, you might lose a little bit of data from the time that the infection took place to the time that your recovery or of the last backup. But and you might lose some hours of productivity, but you're not going to be out millions of dollars, right? So you're mitigating that by having your backups in place. Addressing it also it's important to find out how it happened. We might believe that it happened from a certain instance, but you want to make sure that you have an IT professional that is able to identify the what we would call the vector of infection, or how that started, and then with that information in the recovery phase, that information will be critical. Okay. Um, and so let's just go ahead and move into recovery. I think addressing and investigating it, the main thing that we want to remember is time is not on your side. Notify your professionals, your manager, whomever immediately to let them know that either something might have happened or something has happened. Um, I would rather have 100 calls where it turned out to be nothing and then not get the one call where something did happen, right? You're and it's not something that anybody needs to be embarrassed about. The best people in the world that are even trained on this can be susceptible, because at the very end of at the end of every day, we're humans and we trust other people, right? Um, and so don't be embarrassed about reporting it, because it can happen to anybody. The main thing is time is not on your side, right? So now we're going to move in, if that's okay with you, Josh. If you have any questions, I'd like to move into recovery.
No, I think you've kind of covered it all right there,
Okay.
Brandon. So yeah, take it away, my man.
Okay. So I'm so passionate about this. I could literally talk about cybersecurity all day long. I know we don't have that kind of time. But backups, 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 backups. You can put that in all capitals. You can bold, underscore, highlight it, make it flashing colors. That is going to be the number one recovery method. And it's also, I can consider it a defensive measure against data loss, right? So if you have your backups, again, a layered defense. And at BIS, we do that as well. We have multiple ways in which we can back up the data, and secure it in the event that even if one backup source fails, we have others that then can cover the gap, right? Um, so backups is hugely important, both from a defensive and recovery standpoint, because like I said during the investigation portion of it, if that machine is just, if it's just gone or it's encrypted, well, then you wipe away the data, you restore from backup, you're good to go, right? You also want to make sure that your IT professionals are providing all the recap and all the information from the infection so that the management who in your organization can evaluate to see if additional, like what lessons can we learn from this incident, right? There might not be. It might be just that, Susie Q or John Doe need to get more training, or they need to be, they have to go through another cybersecurity training class, or they need to have some one-on-one education to be able to help them in the next instance. And that might be all that it is, but it might also identify gaps in your defense, right? Maybe there's an aspect that you didn't consider before, like let's say router, like your router was somehow exploited. Well, then maybe we need to get maybe that you consider router maintenance as a viable solution to shore up that particular hole in your defense. So it's very important that at least a group at the management level review and assess what happened, how it happened, and then come up with ways to learn from that and how can we move forward to further improve your defense posture, right? And then also in recovery, not so much to a specific defense, but this is where I would also put in, periodic reviews of your internal processes. And what I mean by that is annually, every few months, whatever is appropriate for your organization, review the processes that you have in place to protect your data and make sure that you're keeping up with current technology, both for the cyber protection side of it, but also for the cyber threat side of it. As technology continues to expand, then I can tell you that the bad actors are learning, because once Microsoft, let's say Microsoft puts out a patch that covers up one exploit or addresses a particular exploit, well, they're not going to just sit there and say, "Oh, well, cybersecurity is not for me. I'm gonna turn straight and go get a real job." That's not going to happen. They're going to find another way to get into your system, and so we should be doing the same thing as well. Is reviewing, make sure that all of our processes um, are in line with our cybersecurity uh, guidelines. When I say ours, I mean whatever is appropriate or whatever you have in place for your organization. And your IT professionals can be able to help you with that, provide counseling or provide expertise to make sure that your network, your data, and your employees are trained and and everything is protected.
And that's why, folks, we call him the Buddha of cyber safety. Brandon, you are the man. I mean, I have a passion. You say you have a passion for cyber safety or cyber security. I could say the same thing because I have the same thing for sports, and we could talk about these things all day long. Because, man,
Oh
you
my
know what you're
gosh.
talking about, and you know what people need to hear when it comes to this topic.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I'm very passionate about this, because I can see it from the professional side of it, right? I've been in there where, during the prevention part of it, the investigation portion of it, and the recovery, and I can see the risks that are involved, and I've seen the costs that are involved, not just in money. We talk about money a lot, but you also look at it as an erosion of your organization's reputation, which can translate to dollars as well, but it's hard to quantify, and you want to be able to make sure that yes, we had a breach, but it was stopped, boom. It shouldn't be, it shouldn't be embarrassing to have a breach, because it's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, but it's how you address it, I think, is what defines a mature organization from a company or from another organization that might not take it so seriously. So yeah, I mean, and again, I could talk about this all day. I've got so many other things I want to say, but I know we have limited time.
Well, we're going to have you on plenty more times throughout the year, Brandon, to talk about these things. And again, the topic of today, prevention, investigating, recovery. And Brandon has covered it so well. Again, anything when it comes to cyber safety, folks, if you don't know, please reach out. Even if it's not us, again, we do a great job here at BIS with our IT department in producing cyber safe policies. And also, we've come up and just to give this, for everyone listening out there, cybersecurity solutions, another thing we're kind of, introducing here at BIS. And if you'd like more information on it, please contact us here at BIS. Again, our phone number is 800-247-9045. And also email us at sales@bisconsultants.com on that. Well, Brandon, we're right about out of time here today on the podcast. Anything we need to say before we kind of sign it off today?
No, just have a great day and think before you click.
Well said. Again, he is the Buddha of cyber safety, and that is Brandon Lewis. Brandon, again, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. It's always a pleasure, man.
Thank you for having me. I enjoy these conversations, Josh.
No problem at all, man. I do as well. We can have more of them throughout the year here on the BIS podcast. That has been broadcasting live on the Marvin Network. Once again, folks, thank you for joining us today. He's Brandon Lewis. I'm Josh Green. And until next time, so long and goodbye.